This video is presented by Blue Haven Pools. We'll be talking about advanced water chemistry, the different types of algae, how to combat them, and how to prevent them. We provided this chart in our basic water chemistry video, and we'll give it to you again here just to recap. The ideal levels for pH is between 7.2 and 7.6. For total alkalinity, between 80 and 120. A calcium hardness level between 200 and 400, and we want to check out free chlorine levels between 1.5 and 3.0 in a chlorine pool. And if you have an ozone or UV system on your pool, you can keep that as low as 0.6, between the range of 0.6 and 1.5, which is significantly less chlorine. I want to take a look down here at the bottom at phosphates and nitrates. Those are two things that we will be looking at in this video regarding algae. Phosphate levels we'd like to see below 125 and nitrates below 10. Algae is a single-celled or multi-celled organism. Used to be classified as a plant, and it's not any longer, but it lives in water. It can develop in even the most pristinely kept pools, so it is far better and far less costly to prevent algae than it is to treat it after you've had an algae bloom. Prevention is key. Phosphates are a food source for algae. Nitrates and ammonia can also cause very high chlorine demand, and that allows algae to bloom in the absence of any high-powered killing chlorine. There's over 9,000 different types of algae, but most of the ones that we deal with in reference to pools are classified by color, such as green algae, yellow or mustard algae, and black algae. Prevention is key. So here are some tips to prevent algae from growing in your swimming pool. Keep free chlorine levels in the proper range. If they are too low, algae can bloom. Brush the pool frequently. Many people don't brush the pool from head to toe as frequently as they should, and brushing keeps the algae from sticking to hard surfaces. Choose a non-phosphate scale defense. Any types of scale defense that add phosphates to the pool are adding a food source to the pool. Use an algicide monthly, even in the winter months, to help prevent algae from blooming, and keep fertilizers and animals out of the pool. Also, keep any septic tank irrigation systems from spraying into the pool. Advise children against urinating in the pool. And if you do see even a trace amount of algae, treat it immediately. Brush it off, kill it, brush it off, and get rid of it to keep it from spreading. Many people reach for an algicide when they see algae or green water, but algicides are used to prevent algae, not remove it. Some algicides can cause foam. Choose algicides that specifically state they are non-foaming. Copper-based algicides are very effective, as algae cannot grow in a copper environment. But watch accumulations of copper levels and use a sequestering agent if they get too high, or it can cause staining. Products labeled algae remover or algae killer usually contain some type of chlorine. You may be able to accomplish the same thing with chlorine powder and at a much less expensive price tag. Algicides should be added monthly in order to prevent algae from forming, and they will not work if they're added less frequently than that. If you already have green water or visible algae growth, you will have to remove it first and then add your algicide to prevent it from coming back. In the following slides, we will show you how to remove algae. Phosphates. They are a food source for algae. Leaves, soil, fertilizer, rainwater, tree bark, seeds, those little acorns that fall into the pool, all of those are just a few examples of how phosphates enter the water. They are a food source for the algae and can cause algae to thrive when levels are higher than 125 parts per billion. Phosphates cannot be removed with chlorine, so you do have to use a special phosphate remover. We use one called Phosphoree that will collect the phosphates and then trap them in the filter. The filters must be cleaned after using a phosphate remover, or they will be gummed up and clogged up and cause even more problems. If you have green water or visible algae and shocking the pool with chlorine is not working, then that may be an indicator that you have high phosphate levels. So you should have the pool water tested for phosphates. There are home test kits, and your pool professional can also test it. When nitrogen combines with oxygen, it forms nitrates. High levels of nitrates can promote algae growth in swimming pools. The typical sources are from organic plant matter, such as leaves piling up on the bottom of the pool, fertilizers, acid rain, contaminated soil, bather waste, and even animals using the pool, such as dogs or birds, like ducks and geese landing on their pool, and even human sweat. Keep pets out of the pool. One dog in the pool is like having 50 people in it. Like phosphates, high levels of nitrates will increase the chlorine demand, making it harder to keep the water clear and swimmer-friendly. Green water and visible algae growth will occur. The most practical and common way to remove nitrates is to drain partially some of the water and refill it with fresh water in order to drop the levels. Now, nitrates aren't always a problem and don't need to be addressed unless you actually see visible algae growth and all other sources of it have been eliminated. When nitrogen combines with hydrogen, you get ammonia. Ammonia can cause high chlorine demand as well, green colored water and a really foul smelling water odor, and also visible algae growth. It is introduced into the water through fertilizers, decaying leaves and debris, urine, sweat, feces from animals such as birds, ducks, and dogs. Cyanuric acid or stabilizer can also convert to ammonia over the winter if the chlorine level becomes too low. So have your water tested for ammonia when opening it in the spring, just to make sure that your stabilizer hasn't converted over the winter. If your chlorine tabs are dissolving and you still have foul water, or you've been shocking and it's just not working, that's an indication that you might have high ammonia levels. Ammonia must be shocked out by using large doses of high chlorine content shock or powder. We recommend using chlorine powder, as it's about 65% available chlorine compared to a 30% available chlorine shock. And if you'll use the higher powered chlorine, we want to raise the free chlorine level to 10 times the level of ammonia. So in other words, if you have 4 parts per million ammonia, we need to raise the free chlorine level to 40 parts per million. That's called superchlorination and breakpoint chlorination. You have to hit it hard and you have to hit it fast. The first type of algae that swimming pool owners encounter is typically green algae. Green algae is the most common variety, and it will color the entire pool water and make the whole thing just look like a big pond. It is free floating in the actual water, causing the entire body of water to change colors. Now it can also cling to the walls and ladders and other surfaces and still needs to be brushed off. It can be in particularly rough areas or places where circulation is low. And it can show up as sheets where large wall sections are covered with green slime. Now typically the rule of thumb on green algae is to double shock if it's green, and if you can't see the bottom, triple shock. Yellow or mustard algae is a wall clinging variety. It is usually found on the shady side of the pool. It can be sheet forming and cover one whole area of the pool and not be on the other. And it's very difficult to eradicate completely. Once it's started an algae bloom, you could spend the entire season fighting off yellow algae. Reinfection is very, very common, so it's very important to follow the steps in our next slide to the T. You have to also treat any algae that may have survived on equipment such as pool toys or floats, any cleaning equipment like your brush or your vacuum. all of those have to be soaked in water that's been superchlorinated. It's very resistant to just normal chlorine levels, so you have to hit it hard with at least a triple shock, and you may have to do that several times in order to fully eradicate it. Perhaps the most aggravating strain of algae is black algae. It can be extremely difficult to eradicate completely. The difficulty in removing it is due to a strong biofilm protective layer over the top of the organism that prevents chlorine from actually penetrating it. Black algae starts as little dark black or bluish green spots, even the smallest size of a pencil eraser, in little corners. It can be in the grout of the tile, and then it starts growing from there. Unless the organisms are completely destroyed, a new bloom will grow back in the exact same place. You have to keep destroying through that biofilm layer. And that protective layer keeps it protected from a normal chlorine environment. So we have to hit it hard as well with a very strong chlorine presence and lots of brushing with a steel bristled brush to break through that biofilm. This kind of algae is usually entered into a pool from the swimsuit of a person who's recently been in the ocean or from some other contaminated pool cleaning equipment. Now that we know what causes algae and the different types of algae, we must discuss how to treat it. There are 7 steps in getting rid of algae. Number 1, prep it. Balance your pool water. Get your pH, alkalinity, and calcium hardness all in alignment. Remove any leaves or debris from the pool bottom and circulate the water 24/7 until your algae is gone. You do want to continue using auto pool cleaners to help circulate the water. Be sure that all the leaves are emptied out of them. Number 2, kill it. We got to shock the pool. You will need at least a free chlorine level of 30 parts per million. That's a triple dose of a good high-powered shock. If chlorine does not work, have your water tested for phosphates, ammonia, and nitrates. You may need a higher dose chlorine, and you may need to add many more large doses. Number 3 is to brush it. You must brush the algae off the walls, steps, tile, any plaster surface. Sometimes people try to skip this step and the algae may appear gone, but it will come right back. So brush, and use a corner brush to get into little round spot areas and the pool corners. If you have black algae, you may even need to use a metal brush. That's a specific type of brush where the bristles are metal as opposed to vinyl. But you must be very careful with this type of brush and not push too hard, as you will mar the bottom of the plaster and scratch it up. So you just want to push just hard enough to get that algae off of there and not scratch the pool bottom. Step 4 is to vacuum it. Let any settled algae go to the bottom and then vacuum all of the algae off of the bottom of the pool. Step 5 is filter it. Trap all of the algae in the filter. Now it should have been running 24/7 while you're doing these other steps, and after 24 hours of vacuuming, you should be able to clean the filters now. This is very important, or you could risk recontaminating the entire pool. Step 6 is to repeat it. You want to repeat these steps until the algae is fully eradicated, and you may need to repeat this process 2 or 3 times. Step 7 is to prevent it. Sanitize all your toys, floats, swimsuits, your brush head, your vacuum head, and increase your circulation and increase free chlorine levels for a little while. And also start to begin a monthly algicide program to prevent future outbreaks. Most of the instructions in treating algae are pretty self-explanatory, but you may be asking yourself, how do I shock the pool? First, read the instructions on the shock that you buy. Different types and brands have different recommended dosages, such as 1 pound for every 10,000 gallons or 1 for every 8,000 gallons. Use the gallons in your pool to calculate how much shock to use for a regular dose. Then, you can either double that if the pool is green, or triple that dose if you need to treat algae, or if you can't see the bottom of the pool. Add shock 1 pound at a time and repeat until the full dosage is achieved. The steps to add shock to the pool are: fill a 5-gallon bucket with water, cut off the top of the bag of shock carefully, be careful not to spill it on your clothes or on the deck, add the shock to the water without splashing, never add water to shock. Stir it with a wooden stick to combine, and then, with the pool running, pour the shock into the deep end of the pool. Repeat the process until the appropriate dosage is added, and then always shock at dusk or at night. Here are some tips for shocking your pool properly. Shock at dusk or at night. This keeps the sun from degrading your shock. Balance the pool water first, so that the shock will work appropriately. Wear protective gear, gloves, eyewear, and even clothes that you don't care about, because if chlorine splashes out on them, it will bleach them. Use a scoop to measure 1 pound of shock if you've bought it in a large 25-pound or 50-pound bucket. If you have stained or custom deck, set your bucket in the grass prior to mixing, so that if there's splash out, it won't harm your deck. And if 5 gallons of water is too heavy, you can use a smaller bucket and just make more batches. If you want to know more about which type of shock to add to your pool, please watch our video on chlorine to learn more about different types of chlorine and how to maximize your results. Please watch Advanced Water Chemistry Chlorine to help you understand the differences in chlorine and to aid you in selecting the one that's right for you. Please watch our other instructional videos to gain further knowledge of advanced water chemistry. And if you would and find this video helpful, please like our video at the bottom of the link and check out our Facebook page as well for more information, blogs, and insight into keeping your pool crystal clear and swimmable.